Tim. Welcome back to Watchbox Studios, and thanks for logging on. Tonight, on Watches Tonight, we're talking about watch buying during times of crisis. My favorite Zenith El-Primeros, because you asked. Blancpain versus Rolex in the Dive Watch Stakes, and as ever, I am sharing your viewer wrist shots right here and answering your live questions. Spare a thought for the Watchbox.com, the people who pay for these pixels. After all, they make the show possible. When you're ready to buy, trade, or sell, the Watchbox. Over 3,000 watches live, both pre-owned and vintage. And, I should mention, there is a new customer service email, Mosso at thewatchbox.com, if you see something you want to buy and you'd like to reach out. Viewer wrist shots. I asked, you delivered. Okay, Max L gets us started. Striking a casual pose with his 1987 Longines hour angle, a nice traditionally sized pilot's watch, and one of the first from the Longines Heritage Collection. Richard W. shares his JLC Master Compressor chronograph Valentino Rossi, the Professor, on your tabletop. Ryan M. stages his Grand Seiko SBG A 373 and dashboard for our first watches and wheels shot of the evening. I like the car. Ian S. from England captures his Panerai Luminor 8-day PAM 560 with Lego Boba Fett. Guys, keep it coming. Send your wrist shots to mondaymailbag at thewatchbox.com to see your pieces on these pixels. Jumping into the chat box this evening, I see Adam Crossfire, a friend from the UK who evidently races a Chrysler Crossfire. He reached out by email. We got Eddie Landsberg leading the line, longtime friend of the brand and lately studio audience, the 95th fan to Mr. No Date, Blue Shirt Buddha, Thomas Burnett, Logan Hall, Chip Wong, Gilberto. We've got Galvin W. We've got Jared. We've got Turkischer Meister, our friend from Turkey, Danger Will Robinson, Jens K. And of course, Dems joining in from Germany, and Jenks72 from sunny Wales. Good to hear it's finally sunny in the British Isles, especially this time of night. Guys, getting up early or staying up late in Europe, thank you so much for joining. Let's jump straight into one of your questions. Franz K. from Germany asks, is this a great time to buy a watch or an awful time to buy a watch? I'm conflicted and trying to work up the courage to buy my dream watch, an Omega Seamaster Diver 300 meter. Okay, fair enough. Good question, because the answer is going to depend largely on you. So, an important question, and I want to read your takes on this from the chat box. So, interactive feature, as I give my take, I want to hear yours. Question from Logan Hall, though. Tim, what happened to your hair and who took your sunglasses? The sunglasses, by the way, right over my shoulder, still on the set. What happened to my hair? Roughly 8 weeks without a haircut. That's what happened to my hair. So, buying a watch during a time of crisis, and it's pretty much that wherever you live right now. Here's my take. And yes, as the watch guy, I'm going to be honest and tell you that there are times not to buy. So my advice for all is to make no purchases that stress your mind or finances. Yes, I'd like to sell you a watch today, but I'd rather that you feel great about your purchase than swallow it like a pill. So a pandemic, depending on where you live, is either underway, paused, or receding, depending on where you are and who you ask. Instead, ask questions about yourself that can be answered. Am I financially secure and feeling good about my position? How's my employment situation? How about my savings? How about debt obligations, the money that we've already spent? Prospects for the future in all regards, and of course school plans. After all, if you're going to be entering school or you're in school, not only is that a big financial commitment, but also it can be a little bit stressing, and sometimes when we're in stressful situations, we make impulsive choices. I got some accounts of my own on that matter that I'll elaborate later. Critically, will this purchase cause me more stress or pleasure? Now here's where my part of the story comes in. I've done this with cars and always ended up feeling bad about the purchase. I didn't enjoy those cars as much as I hoped. In a time when I felt squeezed by big changes in my life, I often sought the refuge of something I love, cars. And in the end, making that big choice in a time of uncertainty led me to feel worse about my uncertainty. So the big purchase at a time of stress, not recommended. And that's the lesson. Don't buy something that will leave you feeling exposed. There will be a time to buy a watch, just as there will be a good time when the sun shines to buy that convertible. Ask, if you do want to get into the watch, can I sell this watch quickly? Let's say I get in and my car or my watch, I realize it wasn't what I thought, I don't feel great about the purchase, I want to sell. Okay, if you're talking about a no-date sub, then the answer is yeah, you probably can sell that watch pretty quickly and get good money, something close to what you paid for it. On the other hand, if you have very particular tastes and you're that idiosyncratic guy like moi, who would buy a D2 Audi S8 from like 15 years ago and pour money into it, no, you're probably stuck with that car or that watch. The Palladium Parmigiani Pershing chronograph is the equivalent of like my 2003 Audi S8. You had to find exactly that kind of guy who wants that kind of hardware. And for the car and the watch, not too many. So, also ask, because watches can be a family matter, will this strain my relationships? Is there a significant other or a dependent who's in some way going to be affected by this or get pissed off at me? If the answer is yes, probably hold off. And then finally, I always like to ask this hypothetical when I'm buying something that's purely for fun. Discretionary, recreational, unnecessary. Can I entirely write off the loss? That is, if I buy that 993 Porsche that I've always wanted and I drive it off the dealer lot and it gets rammed from the side and all of a sudden, oh God, it's totaled, can I walk away from that both physically and financially and not miss it? In the case of a watch, watches generally aren't insured like cars, which means you've got to be able to think, if this is stolen, destroyed, or lost, can I laugh it off? If the answer is no, forestall the purchase. Now, if none of these answers are discouraging to you, guess what? You're in the catbird seat right now because there are some once-in-a-lifetime opportunities available to buy watches right now. I'll give you some examples from the car world, because you know that's how I swing. But back in the 2008 to 2010 depths of the last recession, the low ebb of value for the 993 Porsche that we just talked about, the Lotus Esprit V8s, the late ones, 2002, 3, 4, back when those were selling for like $25,000, $26,000, I wish I'd gotten into that Lotus Esprit because that's twice the price now. And the BMW Z8, can you remember when that was like a $65,000, $75,000 car? Now it's like 2 to 3 times that. They're now all worth multiples of what you could have paid if you had the money and the inclination to do this 12 years ago. So, for American watch collectors, there's a lot going on right now. There's the pandemic, there's social tumult, economic questions. We have issues that are unique to the country, and I know most of my viewers, something like 56% of you guys, are from the States. All major considerations, all major concerns and questions to be answered. Speak honestly when you speak to yourself. But we just sold an Audemars Piguet Grand et Petit Sonnerie, a watch made in 50 pieces by APR Piguet in 1994, and we sold it for like under $80,000. Consider that same watch, if it said FP Journe on the dial, would cost $680,000, and you get a sense of the kind of buys that are to be had. In the world of steel Rolex, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, not only have prices softened a little bit, but supply has improved, meaning you're going to have more choices and more opportunities to play the market instead of let the market play you. Call around to dealers and get the best deal. Hey, I'm a dealer and I'm telling you that because I'm a watch collector and a car guy first, and we are kindred spirits. All of which is to say, know your circumstances, know thyself, and be honest. Jumping into the box right now, we got some comments coming through. And G, Tim, best everyday piece between $6,000 and $10,000. You can just about get into a Blancpain 50 Fathoms for about $9,000 right now. Or you could get a Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Compressor Memovox, which is both a dive watch and a wrist alarm. That would be my pick. Right here we have Mr. No Date. Who is insuring their watches? Or is there supposed to be an N in there? Who isn't insuring their watches? By the way, in the US, if you're interested in insuring your watches, Chubb Group, probably the best terms. Don't put it on your property insurance. It's going to cost you a fortune. Right here, WC, good advice on all fronts, but if you can afford to get nothing back and won't need that money, have fun. Right here, Andrew Holt, S8 Audi Executive Rocket. Caned within an inch of its life. I had mine up all the way to the fuel cutoff down on I-95 in Florida. And then right here, we have a comment from K. Kyle saying, I speak the truth, and I appreciate that. Rick Green saying we're being ethical about our position on buying watches, and hey, we want you here for the long haul. We're not off to make a quick buck. That's not what I'm about. That's not what Watchbox is about. Feel good about your purchase, as I say. If it's not fun, it's not a hobby. And then right here, we have AH asking, hi Tim, do you think pre-loved Rolex ceramic black dial Daytona would fall back to retail or slightly below retail? I don't think it's ever going to fall back to retail because at the moment, that's a watch that still trades around $19,000, $21,000, and the watch retails for about $13,100. So it would really have to pop, and I mean burst like a balloon in order to get back to retail, $13,100. I don't see that happening. I will say this, for some reason it seems like the 116520s, the steel bezel Daytonas, are softening a little bit, and as ever, it's a buyer's market if you're into two-tone. I don't care whether you're talking about Rolex in-house or Zenith Daytona. Right here, bump, bump, bump. Enrique C is saying, if you feel sad, buy a Viper. Good advice. If you got the cash, that's a way to put a smile on your face. And then Bobby Moon saying, Blancpain 50 Fathoms all the way. Okay, jumping back into our regularly scheduled program, we got a question from one of our own. Bartolo E asks, Tim, what are your favorite Zenith El-Primero models? It was a great question, and I'm going to answer with a half answer, because after all, the 1990s Rolex Daytona was only half Zenith El-Primero, but a very special one. And this Rolex Daytona 16519 in white gold was the Sodalite Dial, which means it was a rare version of an already rare watch. The white gold Zenith Daytona was made from 97 to 99, and the Sodalite Dial was basically the piece you had to know to ask for at the dealer. It wasn't even really cataloged or advertised. All of which is to say, here we are over 20 years later, and if you're going to buy a Zenith from the 1990s, get a Rolex case and the Zenith movement. And let's be honest, 40 millimeters in white gold with a to die for blue mottled marble-like Sodalite dial. This is a handcrafted Rolex in a world where they are few and far between, and it's one of the most unique El-Primero movements you'll find because Rolex highly customized the caliber 4030, effectively making it their own. Chronometer certified, 5-position adjustment, free sprung, 28/8 beat rate. They added their own overcoil hairspring and micro-stella adjustment nuts, making it both tougher and more accurate. But as an El-Primero, maybe you're saying, Tim, that's a cop-out, that's a half-breed, I want full Zenith. All right, sticking with the 1990s, watches that are now justifiably dubbed vintage, I'm talking about the 1990s Zenith El-Primero Rainbow Flyback. The Rainbow Flyback, and there you can see it in mine own hands, possibly one of the very last mechanical watches built by Zenith or anybody to fill a state military contract. French aviation, mil-spec, and yes, 40 millimeters in stainless steel. It's a very wearable pilot's watch. This is the launch platform for the well-loved El-Primero caliber 405 flyback movement. It's an El-Primero Plus, and you can get it on the full bracelet, and you can still pick these up. Full bracelet, intact period tritium dial, intact period tritium bezel, and you will want the period bezel, for $4,000 to $5,000, which means it's still a buyer's market, even though everyone agrees this is a great watch. Quick, before Hodinkee ruins it for everyone, get into one of these. Now, let's say you're more of a dress watch guy. I understand, and believe me, I'm more of that persuasion myself, which is why the roughly circa 2000 Zenith El-Primero Chronomaster Moonphase caliber 410 is where I would direct you. Now, this is possibly the perfect watch. 40 millimeters, handsome, stainless steel, black dial, you can also get silver. Complex calendar, but not an annual or a perpetual, so there's nothing crazy expensive to service. And it's an aperture calendar with a rare Zenith certified COSC. Most COSC chronometer certified El-Primeros are the Rolex versions. This is double Zenith. And I should say that it's perfect for any wrist size at roughly 48 millimeters lug to lug and 40 millimeters, about 13 millimeters thick, and 2000 is just a mid-cycle number. They made this watch in the 90s, they made it in the early 2000s, but after 2001 they were not chronometer certified. So I always look for the serial number on the winding rotor or chronometer stamped on the dial. Again, these watches, it's a buyer's market. I've seen them for as low as $3,500, but do yourself a favor. Get a good example with the full box and papers, full fat, unrefinished, for like $5 grand. Buy the best. When they're not expensive, buy the best one you can find and keep it for the long haul. By the way, a quick note about the rainbow we talked about earlier, a weird bit of a switcheroo midway through production. They actually went from a Luminova dial early in production to tritium late, making this the only such transition from Luminova back to tritium that I can recall in 100 years of making wristwatches. Now, viewer wrist shots too. I asked, you answered. Your analog on my digital, starting with Alec T of Hong Kong. They're not under lockdown anymore, so he's out for a spring stroll with a JLC Reverso tribute to 1931 purchased through Watchbox Hong Kong. Thank you for trusting Zoe, Josh, our whole crew out there, and our company. Abdul R. of Germany in the Black Forest heads outdoors with his Seiko Alpinist. SARB 017, you know I love me some green dial watches. Eddie L., he's in the chat box tonight, longtime fan and late studio audience, shares his Flick Flack, which is kind of an entry-level swatch, with exceptionally preserved anodized alloy case, and that was his first timepiece as a kid. Cameron T. straps his Rolex Oyster Perpetual, a good look, by the way, for that watch, in Hampton Roads, Virginia, famed battle site between the Monitor and the CSS Virginia, better known by its prior name, Merrimack. Good stuff, guys. Keep sending these wrist shots to mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com. Let's see what you guys are saying in the box right now. You always have good comments and good questions. Bum. I could see Avi B. Tim, that hair. That's a statement. It's an unintentional statement. It grows in this way, and I have no means of cutting it, and darned if I'm going to try to do it with my shaver. I've got a beard trimmer at home. I am not unleashing that on my head. Right here, we got Rich Buddy commenting. Nice Seiko there, Abdul. We've also got NS Something laughing out loud at Eddie Landsberg. A good-natured chuckle, I'm sure, because we're all friends here. And then we got a question from Justin D. What do you think of Louis Ulysse Chopard models? They're great watches, and to be perfectly frank, the roughly 2001 LUC Quattro, which is both Geneva Hallmark and chronometer, and a 9-day power reserve, and a GMT. You can get that watch for like $11,000 in yellow gold. It's ridiculous. The caliber 196 from the late 90s, designed by Michel Parmigiani, Geneva Hallmark, and built by Chopard. That's one of the best dress watches you can buy. I would put it alongside the late 1990s Patek Philippe Calatravas, the Longa 1. It's truly of that caliber. And as for the more recent stuff, if you're a car guy like me and you appreciate value in pre-owned, get the LUC Engine 1. It's about as cool as a car-themed watch can get without being literal or co-branded. And then right here we got Boutique 1 saying, hi Tim from Warsaw again, was missing you a lot, hilarious hair. Thank you so much for joining me from Poland, continental Europe, staying up late with us. And then right here we got Frank Sue asking, what's your thought on the Class 4 El Primero? It's a nice early 2000s El Primero look, a little bit stripped down. It's not quite as baroque as the double gadroon bezel of the Chronomaster. I like them both, and you can still get the Class 4 with a full calendar. So if that's more your style, go for it. I'm not going to critique, I'm just more of a Chronomaster guy. Let's talk more about El Primeros and the 2010 Retro Timer. I've actually got a buyer's guide for this one in the oven, so stay tuned. That's going to appear on quillandpad.com. But get it in steel with the full bracelet because they only made a few hundred of these guys. This is a model that came out in 2010. It was made for about 18 months. They made 1,000 to 2,000 Retro Timers total, but most of those were the black PVD model on the strap. The Retro Timer in steel, polished, full bracelet, silver dial. That watch only exists in a few hundred copies, making it genuinely exclusive. And this is Jean-Frédéric Dufour era Chronomaster case geometry, so 42 millimeters, very wearable, handsome, and a solid dial that frankly looks like a Zenith and not a Tag or an Hublot. This is a watch that's a little bit unusual as it runs continuously as a chronograph. It has a flyback for the seconds and the minutes, but as soon as you reset with the flyback, it restarts. So it's always running. But because the El Primero never has a hacking function, Day-Fi El Primero 21 accepted, This is one of the few El Primeros that has hacking potential, as you can use the chronograph as constant seconds and synchronize as soon as you set the minutes. Now, it's 100 meters water resistant, it's a good size, it's a very rare watch and a rare movement only ever used in this model. All of which is to say, it's absolutely unique, and whereas there's a million caliber 400 El Primeros out there, there are only a few hundred watches like that. Highly recommended. Now, Captain Windsor Annual Calendar. This is a great watch. I fell in love with it, and it took about 2 years for it to hit after they showed the prototype in 2010. But it's the best of everything. 42 millimeters, stainless steel, originally launched in the model you see right there with the blue dial as a benefit piece for the Horology Museum of Le Locle, Switzerland. It was much like the MIH watch, and like the MIH watch, it was a calendar designed by Ludwig Oxland, formerly of Ulysse Nardin, today of Ox und Junior. He designed this system with 9 pieces, and it's driven entirely by wheels, so it's both unbreakable and quick settable. It is an El Primero and a Ludwig Oxland annual calendar, which is super cool, making this a more mainstream version of Oxland's MIH watch, and more available. It's also more interesting horologically because that had a 7750 as its chronograph base, but with the annual calendar from Zenith, you're getting an El Primero. And I should mention, there is an even better version of the Windsor Annual Calendar, the one I would and will buy, which is the 2013 boutique exclusive smoked and hallmarked precious metal palladium Fume dial. That is a genuinely sexy watch, and it will be in my collection sooner rather than later. Finally, there is the 2014 El Primero Lightweight striking 10th, not to be confused with the subsequent lightweight and lightweight Rolling Stones. This is a very special watch. A modified caliber 4052, which has the striking 10th foudroyant complication, flying seconds on the dial, a 10-second hand to finally let you read those fractions of the El Primero second, and the whole movement, which is made entirely of titanium, weighs 15.5 grams, meaning not only is it a unique Zenith complication, the striking 10th is rarely seen and much lauded by critics, but the whole movement itself is made in an alternative material. You could see the one exception on the case back, the iridescent purple 100-tooth striking 10th wheel that runs the flying second. Now 45 millimeters, but you are getting a feast of materials technology. You're getting carbon fiber. You're getting aluminum under that. The case itself properly is aluminum. The sheath is carbon fiber. You are getting that titanium movement, bridges and plates in titanium. You are getting a strap made of Codura. All cool stuff. That's why this watch weighs between 45 and 50 grams, making it lighter than the FP Journe 2012 to 2014 aluminum models. And FP Journe gave up on making aluminum watches. This is the Zenith to own because they made 100 pieces. It is truly exclusive, truly special, 100 meters water resistant, and though 45 millimeters, it weighs as much as a pack of juicy fruit gum. You're gonna forget it's there. You're gonna shoot panicked glances at your wrist, wondering if it's still there. Like, did I lose it? No, it's still there. But it's just a lightweight, hence the name. A lightweight in name, but not in stature. A truly special piece, and possibly the most memorable modern sporting El Primero. Jumping into the box right here, Eric Nielsen saying, Hampton Roads, Virginia, by the way, is where they build all the big warships to this day. True, if you're gonna watch a carrier go to pieces, or come back together, whether they're taking them apart or building them, it's going to be down there in Virginia. Also, Kyle K complimenting our man Alec from Hong Kong, saying that reversa was superb, by the way. I have to agree. Adrian throwing us back to the 90s, saying loving the hair, very Oasis. I'm in my own fugue, courtesy of Champagne Supernova. You guys didn't know I came on loaded. Fact. And right here we have bum. We got Colin B saying, hi Tim, 3 a.m. in India and watching live. What about the Zenith Cosmograph not by Rolex? Not one of my favorites. Ultimately, if you're gonna go with a 90s Zenith movement, it's gotta be the triple calendar Chronomaster, the Rainbow Flyback, maybe in the early 90s, one of the Leducas, or you're gonna go with the Rolex. That's just kind of the way I'm seeing it. And then right here, we have Abdul asking, what are your thoughts on Zenith vintage watches? Vintage Zenith watches are great pieces. You got a lot of choices. I actually think when you go true vintage with Zenith, it's more interesting to look at movements like the 135 or the 5011K. Try to find something that's really old and a chronometer movement. Something that is not an El-Primero, because we've got a lot of El-Primeros in the modern era. Go back and find something like, you know, an old Dayfi. Go find something like a 5011K pocket watch or aviation clock. Go find a 135. Those are the interesting movements in vintage Zenith. It's not the old El-Primeros. And then right here, Eric Nielsen saying he appreciated the Oasis comment. And then Andrew Holt saying Oasis in my hometown of Manchester. Viewer wrist chats, guys. Your pieces on these pixels. Simon H. captures a sea dweller and a floor dweller in our first ever watch and dog shot. Guys, we do the watches and wheels with the cars. Send me your watch and dog shots. Louis L. from Pasadena from the left coast strikes a fully gloved pose with his Tudor Tiger Prince chronograph. Adam C. of the UK, a fellow auto racing fan, I'm told, and a racer of Chrysler Crossfires, basks in the sun with his Omega Constellation, an underrated watch. And Roy S. wins the watches and wheels stakes by a mile with his VX generation Dodge Viper, I should say SRT Viper, and Omega Bullhead re-edition. Very cool stuff. All right, guys, remember, Monday mailbag at thewatchbox.com. Send me your wrist shots. I want to see them here. And then we have all sorts of comments coming in. Watches of London saying Tim is the Einstein of horology. I would be more than happy to just be like the Heisenberg, but you know, that's just me being modest. Or maybe, let's see, I would say Edward Teller, but he was a jerk. Then right here, Mr. B saying, Tim, I came for your hair. Are we gonna like shed tears when Supercuts reopens? I'm beginning to sense we're all like kind of heading for a heartbreak with this hair because I don't plan to keep it. Then again, I am metal till I die, so maybe I have to. We have Keystar G60 Tim. Was the Zenith Pilot Double-Matic El-Primero only manufactured in one dial color? Yes and no. That model was, but that movement was in a weird multi-city watch launched during the dying days of the Terry Nataf regime in the late 2000s. So yes, the Double-Matic was only made in the one black dial. No, that's not the only Zenith with that movement. If you can live with the look of the other watch that features that movement, you can get a black or a silver dial. But again, it is a very acquired taste. Jumping back into our regularly scheduled program, this one is as mainstream as they come, and it's a question from Gary L. Tim, I'm comparing the Rolex Deepsea and the Blancpain 50 Fathoms. Price isn't an issue for me, but my wrist is 16 centimeters circumference like yours, and I want to know which you think is a better daily driver for office and weekend. Okay, Gary, you came to the right place. But first, ask yourself whether you prefer a bracelet or a strap, because this is going to be one of the two defining distinctions between those watches, and the other one's going to be weight. So, the 44mm Deepsea features the world's best diving clasp. Not only does it have a fold-out flip-lock all-or-nothing dive extension, but it has a wonderful sawtooth serrated incremental adjuster system. This is the glide lock from the standard Sea Dweller 43 and the Submariner on steroids. Steroids and the richest cream you can imagine, as it is super slick in operation, and its purpose is to allow you to adjust the clasp while the watch is still on the wrist. That's not easy to do with the standard Sea Dweller and the Submariner, and it's important if you are going to be using this thing at sea or in a marine environment, you don't want to drop your $12,000+ dive watch. So it's got a great clasp for adjustability, but also extension if you need to wear it over some sort of a suit, including a winter coat. We do not always dive with our dive watches, and I acknowledge this. But here's the thing. Weight. The Deepsea and its colorful D-blue kissing cousin both weigh like a battleship anchor on your wrist and fit like a 19th century Jules Verne style diving suit. This is a huge watch, and it feels it on your wrist, and it will swallow your wrist, especially, Gary, if your wrist really is 16 centimeters. Here's the nearly 18mm thick Deepsea on my wrist. You can see how big that watch is. It wears like a clock, and once the clock comparisons start, you realize the watch is too big. Will it sit securely? Yes. Will it look a little bit ridiculous? Absolutely. But here's the 50 fathoms on my arm. This is the benefit of filming 5,000 watches. I've got a reference for everything. Big difference and advantage, by the way, Blancpain. Though this is a 45mm watch, it is a night and day difference compared to the full bracelet 44mm Deepsea. That wears more like a 46 or a 47. This wears more like a 42 or a 43. Okay, at this point, Gary, I have to say that the Deepsea for you, given your wrist size, is going to be either a weekend watch or a party watch. It's something you wear to let your hair down. It will be too large or uncomfortably or simply too ridiculous to take seriously. That said, if you can try it on, and I always say try before you buy. Remember, here at the Watch Box, we give you 7 days to send the watch back if you buy it by mail and decide you don't like it. So we have that flexibility, but always try before you buy. If for some reason you find that on your wrist, maybe it's the shape, maybe it's your taste, maybe it's just a lack of nerve endings, the watch feels great and you love it, well, you know something? If you can make peace with the size and you take yourself as unseriously as my ridiculous self, here are a few more points to consider. Rolex clearly has the best warranty at 5 years versus Blancpain's 2 to 3. I've heard some Blancpain boutiques will give you 5 years, but that's highly variable. If you register it with the watch, or you register the watch with the company, Blancpain will give you 36 months, but Rolex gives you 5 standard. This is a factor to consider whether you buy new or used, because if you're buying a 1-year-old 50 fathoms, the warranty might be 12 months. If you're buying a 1-year-old Rolex Deepsea, it might still have 4 years, a full presidential term left on the card. That's a big deal. However, the 50 fathoms is a partially handmade and hand-finished watch, which means we're talking a whole horology echelon above anything that Rolex offers, gem setting notwithstanding. It also has a far more interesting and beautiful movement in the caliber 13-15, which is both more anti-magnetic than the Rolex caliber 32-35, which has a 3-day power reserve. This is a 5-day here, but it is also long-legged. This is a watch you can put down for a few days, pick it up, 120-hour power reserve and 3 mainspring barrels, and you're getting all of that on the wrist. They are about equal in terms of accuracy, so the Blancpain movement is longer-legged and more beautiful, also more hand-finished. Retail pricing. I know you say you're not price sensitive, but for our studio and online audience, we do have a studio audience tonight, by the way. Honored guest, Josh, thanks for joining. Here's the thing, $12,600 for the standard Deepsea and $12,900 if you want to go D-Blue, which in my opinion is a ridiculous premium for a different colored dial. But whatever, it's an honest price for a lot of hardware. Retail pricing is going to be $14,500 for a standard steel 50 fathoms and $15,200 for the titanium model, which I recommend, by the way, especially in blue. You can get it in black dial, but I recommend it in blue. There is a $17,200 50 fathoms on the X71 bracelet, which wears nicely, but I don't believe it's entirely in character with the watch. It makes it look too heavy, and the price delta to the Rolex becomes incomparable. We're talking $5,000 now. You know, you're almost in Royal Oak offshore pre-owned territory. Plus, I think the X71 dive clasp is basically MIA. This is a simple deployment clasp. There is no dive extension. There is no adjustment system. So I would rather own the 50 fathoms on a strap. Used. Let's talk about used versions here, because this is Watchbox, the name in pre-owned luxury watches. A current generation Deepsea will be $14,000 to $15,000 right now. If we're talking about the 126660, and a 50 fathoms in steel is going to be $9,000 to $10,000, and roughly $11,000 to $12,000 pre-owned in titanium. Again, get the titanium. Not only is it lighter on the wrist and it wears smaller for those of us who are slight of forearm, but it also has a display case back that you don't get on the steel version of the watch, and that's a big difference maker when you're paying for a hand-finished movement. All right, jumping into the box, Andrew Holt is admiring the Fumé Dégradé dial of the 126660. The James Cameron, after all, is emblematic of his legendary dive into the Challenger Deep in his Deep-Sea Challenger submersible, braving cold and whatever. Rolex, you spend enough money on ads, you don't need a freebie. Okay, viewer wrist shots, let's jump in. Randy A in his Zodiac Seachron chronograph. Enjoy the wild in big sky country, I like it. Tim M, the other Tim M, wins the photography stakes with the show-stealing shot of his Rolex Air King. That is a really good-looking shot. Let me know in the description box below how you took that shot. Jeff M doubles the fun with Double the Watch, two timing in a way that the significant other can conscience, and Curtis A takes us home and wins my heart with his vintage transitional Rolex GMT 16750 and custom 1978 Saratoga, New York made Serrata road bike by Ben Serrata himself back in the Colorado concept era. Rest assured, Curtis, I know you've reached out to me. We will shoot that collector conversation on this channel after the plague. Guys, tmosso at thewatchbox.com is how you reach me if you want to buy anything you see on my social media or on our website. And if you want to send me a wrist shot, Monday mailbag at thewatchbox.com. Two great ways to reach out to yours truly. Jumping into the box, Kirill asking, Tim, what are your predictions for next year's Reverso 90th anniversary? What can we expect from La Grande Maison? I would say a world premiere. What have we never seen from JLC? A Reverso Memovox. And if I can think of one use for a double-sided, double-dialed watch, it would be some sort of system that allows you to set an alarm with a precision never before seen, 24 hours and maybe even 7 days a week, or like the Glasuta Original Senator Diary, up to a month in advance. JLC, please make this happen. We need a Reverso Memovox. It's never happened. That will steal my heart and my wallet. All right, guys, thanks so much. Remember, comment below, let me know. I always read your comments and respond. If you joined in live, you are the world's best YouTube audience. Zero trolls, all positive, and I always read the live chat after the show. Tim_Mosso_ help me fill that gap. Reaching 50K and 2K 20. Guys, thanks so much. Time out, Tim out. Thank you to Sean over there wearing his hazmat suit and socially distancing. Thank you to Josh, and thanks for logging on.